Epic Universe.
Epic Universe.
Epic Universe.
Epic Universe.
Imagine this. You and your family book a vacation to Universal Studios' biggest venture yet, Epic Universe. The media has hyped this park up for months leading to its opening, and the excitement is palpable. After rope dropping some of the headlining attractions, it's come to your attention that during your visit, portions of the park won't be open at all due to unforeseen circumstances. Sounds bad, right? What if I told you this had nothing to do with Epic Universe at all? This actually happened at Universal's first venture in Florida, Universal Studios Orlando, and the way they handled that is why I have so much hope for the future of Epic Universe. Quick disclaimer before we dive in, I visited the park twice, once on April 25th and again on May 15th. This video is split into 4 sections, each starting with things that didn't sit right with me on my first visit, followed by updates or follow-ups based on my second time around. Just a heads up, everything here is subject to change. Even in the short span of 3 weeks, a lot shifted, so keep in mind that what I experienced might already be different by the time you're watching. One of my personal biggest complaints is that on higher traffic days to the park, everything tends to operate a whole lot worse. On my first visit, there was only 3,500 people in the park, but on my second visit on the 15th, there were about 9,000, almost 3 times more. On my first day, almost everything went up within the first hour of the park opening, and very little problems happened throughout the day. However, on the day that I had 10,000 people in the park with me, almost every ride opened later, and with Ministry of Magic being closed, a huge amount of people flooded the other rides. In Nintendo World, Donkey Kong Country feels the most rushed out of the entire section of the park, with wheels on some of the carts missing, and there have been some reports of loading belts melting in the Florida heat. Mario Kart has the most well-themed queue compared to the Hollywood one. Power-up bands are definitely more worth it than Harry Potter wands, and the food tastes great and is fairly well priced. Super Nintendo World is probably the most ironed out place in this park, as I think it had the least budget cuts. There have been constant complaints of Monsters Unchained closing early on a lot of days. However, I've kept an eye on it and it seems to not be doing that much at all. It has been one of the most reliable rides in the park, only getting delayed about once on my second visit for about maybe a 15-minute span. The most unreliable part of this ride, funnily enough, is the pre-show. My biggest complaint, and this is less of a real complaint but more of speculation, is that Monsters Unchained has so many in-depth animatronics that reliability might be an issue. On both of my visits, at least one of the animatronics in the ride wasn't working, but the ride still operates fine. You can really feel some of the budget cuts in the Monsters Unchained ride, as in some portions where you're supposed to be in catacombs, your car will just be pivoted to face a curtain in the wall with some chains hung over it. Monsters Unchained is still one of the best dark rides and is definitely the best implementation of the Kuka Arm system. The immersion systems are really good, the parallax effects on the screen so you don't need 3D glasses are amazing, and in my opinion is better than Battle at the Ministry. Ministry of Magic is one of the harder ones to really feel out. I was only able to go on it once, as the second time I visited it was scheduled for maintenance. I already knew ahead of time. The virtual queue for Ministry of Magic is incredibly bad.
Be your best chance of getting it on the first try. Now, if you click the time and it does not work and you get an error, click the time again. Click a different time. Keep clicking times over and over and over again. It doesn't mean that that time is actually expired. It just means that the server is basically crashing under the weight of everybody trying to click on it, and it's just bugging out. There are still times available.
On 5/16, however, once the ride had reopened past maintenance, virtual queue was gone, and it's been sitting at a standby wait of roughly 150 minutes on average. Incredible theming in this whole area. It just feels empty because there's only one ride and one show. The entire right side of this whole new world is very barren. Load times for the Battle at the Ministry are incredibly slow. It takes about 3 minutes per vehicle as the load and unload stations are on the same location. It's the biggest ride in the park, so this very slow load time is a huge deal. How to Train Your Dragon is probably the most ironed out area and will probably never receive an expansion, at least for a long time. It was fairly fine the first visit with no problems. It was up most of the day on my first visit. However, on my second visit, Hiccup's Wing Gliders did not open until about an hour before the park closed, where it averaged a 100-minute wait time and was incredibly slow with operations. There's really not much to say about How to Train Your Dragon. It's probably the least controversial area. All the food stalls are great. All of the rides are fairly alright. There's never a huge quarrel I've had with this area. In Celestial Park, there's a lot of food options that feel a little bit overpriced. However, the food itself is incredible. It's just overpriced because of the theme park tax. Express Pass has been my biggest issue with this park, as it only is offered for about 8 out of the 11 rides, excluding Ministry, Donkey Kong, and Dragon Racers Rally. You do only get a single Express for each ride rather than the Limitless one, and you're paying about $280, which will average out about $30 per ride you're skipping the line for. It's possible that they will end up offering Express for all of the rides that don't currently, minus, I believe, Dragon Racers Rally, is it doesn't seem to have the area for an express line. Harry Potter also having a standby instead of virtual queue and Donkey Kong being more consistent is making it more believable that they will get there sooner than later. Some of my general complaints that have had me worried about the park are the running times on opening week, as almost every single area has an incredible nighttime lighting package, but the park was opened from 9 to 9, which negated any nighttime lighting packages. However, Universal pushed this back to 10 p.m. and it will definitely be seen during the summer. There is a water treatment facility just east of the park, and occasional smells of sewage would seep into Stardust Racers and Harry Potter. I don't know if they did something about this, but on my second visit, the Stardust Racers line went all the way to the back edge of the park, and I did not get a single whiff of it then. All of these portals, while incredible immersion elements, are huge bottlenecks. Everybody wants to take pictures in front of them. Each entrance to a world does have a secondary entrance that tends to be open the entire day, usually a gate off to the side, or a secondary door that sits off the side of Super Nintendo's border wall. Another one is at the park entrance, where security sits right next to ticketing, unlike the other two Universal parks, and as such, bottlenecks tend to happen there too. Finally, sightlines. I'm not one to care much for sightlines, but when a major pull of your park is these lands that are only connected via portals, being able to see inside almost every land from the Stardust Racers loading platform and from other portions of Celestial Park really takes you out of it in some ways. Mobile ordering is implemented incredibly well in the park, and a majority of the quick service restaurants use it. However, they don't have a lot of a setup for ordering in person, so if you have no phone or your phone's dead, it is a little bit harder to work around. While these flaws aren't ignorable, Universal's vision is incredible, and when this park is ironed out, will easily be one of the greatest parks around. So what do you think? Is Epic Universe going to be a game changer Universal hopes for, or are these red flags we shouldn't ignore? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I want to hear it all. And if you love theme park deep dives like this, don't forget to subscribe and like for more.